Back-to-school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop the latest school styles with an extra 25% off during Tanger Style, our biggest sale of the season, now through August 25th. Plan your trip at Tanger.com.
Happy Fight Day, everyone. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you to a very special edition of Couch Potato Diary. We've been looking at UFC 304 throughout the week, so I thought, why not do a catch-all of everything here on Fight Day? So all the fight coverage from the week wrapped up in one nice little podcast. Hope you guys enjoy our complete coverage of UFC 304. All right, so let's get into UFC 304 and the big story around this, a couple guys returning home. But we will start with Leon Edwards. The fact that he got to this point is truly remarkable. You have Edwards returning home. He was dominated for 23 minutes of a title fight against Kamaru Usman, comes out with a gigantic head kick that shocks the world of mixed martial arts, and all of a sudden, it's okay, well, this guy, it was a fluke, it was a whatever, it's really nothing. He lands that head kick, and now a couple years later, he is the returning king to his hometown in front of what should be a pretty packed house coming up on Saturday night out in Manchester. It is an unbelievable story for him, and a great work by him to prove that it wasn't just a fluke, as he goes out and outpoints Kamaru Usman in the second bout, and then outpoints Colby Covington in their fight, and all of a sudden now is in this spot. But really, when you look at it, what a 4-fight run that Leon Edwards has been on. He beats Nate Diaz, beats Kamaru Usman twice, and beats Colby Covington, firmly establishing himself as the guy at 170 pounds. Again, he was coming off of that head kick win over Usman. It's okay, well, he got controlled, and he just happened to land a lucky kick. But the way he set that kick up was brilliance. And the way he has been able to progress off of that has been nothing short of brilliant so far. So I think all the credit to him for what he has been able to do and turn himself into now this star at 170 pounds. And I think one of the interesting things about this fight, and I think in the overall how it's going to be perceived, is looking at this being the first time that he is kind of the A side in a fight. You know, like he's definitely the B behind Diaz. He's definitely the B behind Usman twice, and he's definitely the B behind Colby Covington. That last one, not warranted. And maybe even maybe all of them, not warranted. The Usman one you can get. He's one of the pound-for-pound kings at the time, maybe the pound-for-pound king at the time. But now he is the main guy in the main event on this show. You have not the undisputed, but you have an interim heavyweight championship fight coming after. There was a time in any combat sport, any heavyweight fight is going to the top of the card, but he is the guy at 170 pounds. He is the guy on this fight card, and I think that's the story of this, is how he has progressed from dominated in a fight, lands the kick, to now being the headliner of a hometown show, a show that is built around Leon Edwards and getting to this point. It is incredible what he has been able to accomplish. On the opposite end of this is Belal Muhammad, who finally gets his shot. He has been dancing around this opportunity for a really long time and calling his shot. And I think he has been kind of limited in a couple of instances. One, he just hasn't been able to get those fights that get you into the title picture. And B, he doesn't have the most aesthetically pleasing style at times. But he's won 5 in a row, and he's beat Gilbert Burns now to really drive it home. And I'm just happy he's getting this opportunity. It is very John Fitch-like. He just comes in, he gets the job done. It's not always the most exciting fight. It doesn't rocket him up the rankings. No one's calling him out. And he finally has been able to progress and progress and progress and earn this shot. And I think it is just, to me, the story of Belal Muhammad is a story of perseverance. He is, without a doubt, one of the most talented fighters in the sport. And I think his talent has greatly outshone his resume, and that has put him in a tough spot where it was tough for him to get these fights. The Gilbert Burns one finally being the one that gets him into this spot, and he has to be sitting there just wondering what could have been, right? Like these two have fought before. There's an accidental eye poke against Edwards that derails the fight 5 minutes and 18 seconds in. These guys haven't lost since. But that 4-fight run that we talked about with Edwards, that goes to Edwards. Bilal Muhammad gets a lesser path, I will say. And that has set him back now, I think. But he has finally been able to work his way up. I wonder if he is thinking, if he beats Leon in that fight, what could have been? Do I get the Diaz treatment? Do I get Kamaru Usman twice? Do I get Colby Covington? And do I now have a show built around me? So he has to be just looking at that and just like, what did I have to do to get to this point? And what did he have to do to get to that point? Like, I do wonder if there's just a little bit of looking at the grass being greener on the other side and how frustrating that may be. The other one on this card is Tom Aspinall finally getting the spotlight he deserves. The heavyweight championship has been held down with this John Jones, Stipe Miocic thing for a while now. And I would just like to state that I have been incredibly frustrated with that. I have felt for a bit that this was a fun fight to me. I was genuinely excited with John Jones against Stipe Miocic. And now it has been really, really, really frustrating. And I get very frustrated with this whole thing because it has held down this division. And now you just have two old fighters who haven't fought in a really long time facing each other. Great. Big whoop. Not super happy about it. And it has really deprived, I think, Aspinall of his time in the sun. You look at what he has done so far. And that has been very frustrating that he has kind of ended up as just a bit of an afterthought in this division. He doesn't really have the name value of those two main guys, and so much focus is on those guys. Aspinall hasn't been past the second round in any UFC fight. He has been steamrolling everyone, with the exception of losing because of an injury. Only one fight has ever been to the second round. If this John Jones thing wasn't happening, he is the clear heavyweight king. And I think getting a little bit more buzz than he does right now. But now again, he gets the hometown spotlight and he has an opportunity to really make himself a star that is deserving of the talent that he has. And so I think that's the story for him this week is can the star power and the attention now catch up to the incredible talent for Tom Aspinall. Over for Curtis Blades, it's kind of the same thing as Bilal Muhammad. Very talented fighter that has been dancing around a title opportunity for a really, really long time. It's almost like the UFC was kind of like, you know what? We have two fighters who have been deserving of title shots. This card has two hometown guys on it that their star is going to, for the hometown, is going to carry this. Let's just throw a bone to a couple of guys who deserve title shots, and either we'll just get them out of the way or we'll get a big upset and we'll get a new something out of it. So I feel like Muhammad and Blades are kind of in the same situation. It always felt like Blades would get close, and whether it be a title eliminator or kind of an eliminator to get to eliminator, he would stumble there. And he would go to the back of the line. And again, it's because he isn't the most exciting. He doesn't have the most exciting style. He doesn't have the most exciting personality, with all due respect. And so that has led to a lot of frustration from his camp. He has now responded in a big time way coming off of his last loss, and he is very deserving of this championship opportunity. He and Bilal both have to treat this as their only shot, in my opinion. I think you have to treat this as the only opportunity you get. I think both guys are incredible fighters. I just don't see them having an easy spot back to this if they end up losing. Overall, this is a fun fight card. It should be just the start, though, of the investment in Leon Edwards and the investment in Tom Aspinall and growing them as guys who could headline. I think Edwards and Aspinall are both good enough that they could headline stadiums for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Now, this is a big arena. It can hold up to 23,000 fans, so it's a very good start. But big shows are something I think this company needs to really get after. They have done very few big stadiums, and I think they have a few guys on rosters that they could do that with now and really start to ramp up the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and hopefully the partnership with the WWE gets them there. All right, UFC 304 going down this weekend out in London. We, on Monday, looked at the big storylines going into the main events. Now let's look at some of the non-main event fights and fighters to watch. And we will start with Bobby Green against Paddy Pimblett in the lightweight division. Paddy had a lot of momentum, but it does feel like that has slowed a little bit. He does get a big win over Tony Ferguson. That doesn't mean what it used to. Now he's facing a fan favorite fighter and someone who will force him to be on his toes. Like, there was a lot of buzz coming around this guy, and now it does feel like that has cooled off a little bit. And it feels like there was a lot of fighters who are like, hey, maybe this guy isn't as good as we thought he was. I'm going to try to jump the line a little bit and get in there with this dude so that maybe I can take advantage of the bigger name than the actual talent. He is still a very, very talented fighter. Don't hear what I'm not saying. He is really, really good still. But it does feel like that momentum has slowed a little bit here as of late. And so I'll be interested to see if he can kind of build that momentum back up. There's a lot of pressure on Paddy Pimblett here. UK fighter fighting in the UK. He was a very well hyped up prospect, and this is a dangerous fighter that can potentially make you a highlight reel. And so it makes this a really, really fascinating fight for me. Again, I think Paddy Pimblett has a bright, bright future ahead of him in this sport. I don't know how much of it is in the immediate. I do think overall he is a better fighter than Bobby Green. But Bobby Green has a certain skill set that can make you look really, really bad very, very quickly. And for Bobby Green, this miraculous last chapter of his career just continues. There absolutely is a ceiling to what Bobby Green can do. We saw that in the fight against Turner. We saw that against Dober. We saw that against Islam Makhachev. There's a ceiling that this guy can get to. But he has turned himself into a must-see fan favorite draw. His exciting style, the way he goes about just everything inside that cage and on fight week, makes him someone that the people really do get behind and really do get excited for. And so for that, he's become incredibly valuable to the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Like, you look at what he can do, whether it is anywhere fighting on the card, right? Like, if you want to put him on the prelims against Jim Miller, then by all means go for it. You want him to wrap up the prelims on ESPN before we go to pay-per-view, dude can do that. You want him on the pay-per-view, all action, he can do that. You need him as a main eventer on a fight night card, he can do that. There is a lot that Bobby Green can do that makes it really, really exciting. And makes him someone that, again, is very versatile for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. One thing you know is that he is going to bring the action. And we said yesterday, or on Monday, like, these are the hometown guys, Leon Edwards and Tom Aspinall. But they're... And I guess Edwards is a household name. Aspinall maybe isn't yet, but people know Bobby Green. And they know, like, okay, this guy's fighting third from the top. There's going to be action. There's going to be violence. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. And this is a guy that we can absolutely get excited about. And he's a fantastic test for an up-and-coming prospect. And he probably doesn't view himself that way, like, oh yeah, I'm a gatekeeper to the stars. But he is someone that, if you are worthy of the hype that, quite frankly, Paddy Pimblett got, you can get past Bobby Green. That is a very valuable part of the UFC roster, and I think the UFC is using him in a really, really good way. This is going to be a great test for Paddy Pimblett, and quite frankly, I don't really know how this fight really all shakes out coming up on Saturday. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. Another name that I'm interested in is Manel Kape. There just always seems to be something going on with him. And knowing that I'm pre-recording these, this was the one that I was the most concerned about just throwing up there. But I do think that this is an interesting fighter, but there's always something, right? Like random injury pullouts, missing weight, all these reasons have kept him out of the cage since September of 2023. I still think there is a very talented fighter there. He's won 4 in a row, 2 by knockout, 2 by decision. I hope he gets to the level that he should. He's 30 years old now. It feels like it's time to get going for this guy. And again, it hasn't necessarily all been his fault. There has been a lot that has been his fault, quite frankly. But this is a fighter who I think still has a great bit of potential, even at 30 years old, to really do something here in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. But it's gotta get going now, and we'll see if it can get going now here coming up this weekend. And the last bout that we're going to focus on here today is Arnold Allen against Giga Chikadze. Allen needs to get back on track. He's another guy who is local on this card. It felt like he would be, by the time this card came around, he would be getting kind of a bigger national spotlight. That hasn't necessarily been the case. It's back-to-back losses against Max Holloway and Movsar Evloev that have knocked him kind of down a peg. He does have some really impressive wins before that, though, against Kattar, Hooker, Usuf, and a number of others. The natural progression, maybe not Max Holloway, but Evloev, that was kind of a natural progression. And the fact that he lost that one, I think, has paused a few things. And so that has, again, made him a bit of a fashionable call-out for a lot of people because there is a lot of hype around this particular fighter. I still think there is a very, very good fighter in there, and there is a lot that you can get excited about. He has been a trendy name to throw out in challenges and to try to take advantage of this potentially on the way down. This is a huge fight for him. He, I think, needs to get back on track in this big way. There's no shame losing to Holloway, not a ton in losing to Evloev, and not that there's a ton losing to Chikadze, but you build them all up, and it starts to feel like you just get further and further and further away from that championship opportunity. And again, Chikadze is nothing to scoff at. He doesn't have the name value of some other fighters, but I do think that there is still a dangerous fighter in there. He loses to Calvin Kattar. That ends a 9-fight winning streak. He bounces back against Alex Caceres. He can still bring it, and he's going to be a really, really tough fight for what Allen is going through right now. And I think this is a very good litmus test. Again, I don't want to call Chikadze a gatekeeper by any stretch of the imagination, but I think whoever comes out of this, that they're not, okay, number one contender, here we go. But they're a fight away from being a fight away from being a fight away. You know, like they are continuing up the ladder in a real exciting way. And I think the loser does kind of go down a notch, that it's going to be really difficult for them to work up. Not impossible. And I think certainly not in Allen's case. But I do think that there is quite a bit on the line for a couple of talented fighters here this weekend. A couple other fight announcements before we go today. Another quick one, I know. But the UFC has named Marcin Tybura and Sergey Spivak number 2 as a main event. I saw someone on X, and I apologize, I missed who it was, but they said some cards have main events and some cards have fights that just go last. And this feels certainly like one of those fights that just goes last. And one of those ones, you know what? The loser of this fight or the winner of this fight, whatever, put him against Alex Pereira, like we talked about on Friday. This is a guy who is daring to be great, wants to move up to heavyweight, so by God, let him. I think that we should give him that opportunity against one of these guys. In terms of what's next after UFC 304, you have the UFC on ABC from Abu Dhabi on August 3rd. Corey Sandhagen in the main event against Umar Nurmagomedov. You have Vicente Luque against Nick Diaz. Marlon Vera against Davison Figueiredo. Tony Ferguson in action against Michael Chiesa. And Mackenzie Dern against Lupi Godinez. So overall, like for a fight card, this is a really, really good fight card and a really stacked one that they are bringing to Abu Dhabi, as obviously they continue to work out there and try to bring a lot more to fans in that neck of the woods. And I think Sandhagen against Nurmagomedov is a really interesting fight. I love that Vicente Luque is getting this big spotlight of a fight against Nick Diaz. Vera against Figueiredo is just going to be an all-action type of a brawl. And then pay-per-view, the next one, is Dricus du Plessis against Israel Adesanya in Australia. A lot going on around that fight, and it should be a really interesting one. All right, we've given you the fighters to focus on. We've given you the stories to watch for. Now it's time to figure out how these damn fights are going to go down. So let's start on the main card with Arnold Allen taking on Giga Chikadze in the featherweight division. Allen is 30 years old, born in Ipswich, England. So he's going to be one of the hometown boys on the show this evening, or coming up on Saturday. Training out of TriStar up here in Canada, as well as BKK Fighters UK. He's 19-3, 7 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission. And he has a pair of decision losses on his resume. One of them coming in his last bout, a unanimous decision loss to Movsar Evloev. I know I'm saying that a little bit wrong. Apologies. That gives him back-to-back losses after a 12-fight win streak where he had 4 stoppages. 10 of those 12 came in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. That is the 3rd longest winning streak in UFC featherweight division history, including wins over Calvin Kattar, Dan Hooker, Sadiq Youssef, Nick Lentz, and Gilbert Melendez. He has been in the promotion since 2015. He is 10-2 in that time. He's a pro since 2012, started that pro career on a 7-fight win streak. He is a BJJ brown belt. Taking on Giga Chikadze, 35 years old, born in Georgia, training out of King's MMA, 15-3, 9 wins by knockout, 1 by submission. He's been submitted once, but the other 2 losses were required the judges' scorecards. Coming off of a win all the way back in August 2023, and this is something we'll get into with him in a little bit. He beat Alex Caceres. That was his only fight in 2023 after just 1 fight in 2022. It's a bounce back after a loss to Calvin Kattar that ended a 9-fight win streak for him. His first decision win since 2020. He had finished his last 3 wins before that. He's been in the UFC since 2019 and is 8-1 in the promotion. This is his second UFC pay-per-view. The first was UFC 248 back in 2020. He almost got into the promotion in 2018, but lost on Dana White's Contender Series, and he's been a pro since 2015. And the inactivity is what has really got Chikadze over time, because he is a really interesting fighter when you see how patient he can be. And he's one of those guys, the volume isn't there a ton, but he absolutely brings the pop in everything that he throws. But he doesn't load up a lot either. It's a lot of just straight down the middle, so some really, really strong kicks as well. In that fight against Caceres was kind of doing the bobbing and weaving and all of that, and Chikadze was just like walking him down and just pop, pop, pop. Pop, pop, pop. It's going to be an interesting test here against Allen, who admittedly has hit a bit of a speed wobble at 30 years old with the loss to Evloev and the loss to Max Holloway. Those have kind of derailed a bit of a hype train after, like I said, wins over Kattar and Hooker and Youssef and Lentz and Melendez. He had been building and building and building and building and building, but that did hit a bit of a wall. Now, the one thing about that is that while I am a fan of Chikadze when it comes to his overall style, Allen has only been really outstruck by Max Holloway. Chikadze isn't going to do that. And he was out-wrestled by Evloev. And really, like, Evloev was putting a lot of pressure on. Allen fought a really good fight in that fight. He just kind of ended up on the wrong side of that. I do think he is going to be able to get the job done in this fight. I think that the speed that he has, again, that's not going to throw off Chikadze a little bit, but I think he's going to be able to beat Giga to the punch a little bit and be able to land some of his shots. And I just think that when he's not fighting some guys who have elite skills in the featherweight division, he's going to be able to show a little bit more of what we think he can do. So I think he is going to be able to get the job done in this bout. Shifting gears now to the middleweight division, as it is Christian Leroy Duncan taking on Gregory Rodriguez. Duncan, 29 years old, out of Gloucester, England. I'm probably saying that wrong. Again, apologies. Training out of Range Martial Arts Academy. He is 10-1, 8 wins by knockout, 1 by submission, and his only loss came by decision. His last fight, excuse me, was in March of this year, a TKO win over Claudio Ribeiro in the second round. He's won back-to-back fights, finishing both of them. He's been in the UFC since 2023, finishing all 3 of his wins. He's only ever fought in Cage Warriors and the Ultimate Fighting Championship, so I think his entire career is on Fight Pass. And he's been a pro since 2015. Rodriguez is 32 years old, born in Porto Velho, Brazil, training at Killcliff FC. He is 15-5, 10 wins by knockout, 3 by submission. He's been stopped 3 times, all by knockout, and lost 2 decision fights. His last bout came in February of this year, a TKO win over Brad Tavares. That's back-to-back knockout wins for him. He's won 4 of his last 5, finishing all of them, and overall, he's finished his last 5 victories. He's been in the UFC since 2021, 6-2 in the promotion. The former LFA middleweight champion has been a pro since 2014 and has actually lost. He actually lost 2 of his first 3 fights. I think this is a really interesting bout. You have a couple of guys, maybe like 29, you can still, I think, consider prospecty. 32, tough to say you are a prospect, but I think these are a couple of hidden gems in the middleweight division. Rodriguez, like we just said, 5 finishes in his last 5 victories. Everything he throws really, really hard. The RoboCop nickname certainly came into play in his bout against Brad Tavares, where he just, like, in the 3rd round, he's like, you know what? Feel like winning now, and just walked him down and just bludgeoned him with rights. And I was going to say rights and lefts. It was basically with rights and rights again. And more rights. He's just absolutely annihilating him with those. But everything he throws is really, really hard. And Tavares was starting to get maybe a bit of success, starting to counter things and starting to get into a bit of a rhythm in the 2nd round. And then in the 3rd, he just got the shit kicked out of him by Rodriguez before they called for the stoppage less than a minute in to that 3rd round. The one thing about him, though, is that the head stays basically center the entire time. Like, it's RoboCop, right? Like, it's just a ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. Like, a lot of the stuff, again, it's really, really hard, and he is a very good striker. But Duncan, there's a little bit more movement. There's a little bit more fluidity to what he is able to do. And again, everything he throws is really, really hard and comes with a lot of power. And so I worry a little bit about the defense of Rodriguez, that he's going to be a little bit hittable in this. Now, all of this being said, he just kicked the shit out of Brad Tavares on the feet. And Brad Tavares is a really, really skilled offensive fighter when it comes to the striking game. And so I think this is a really close matchup, actually. A very intriguing one in the middleweight division. I think a fight for a couple of guys who are going to be able to use this kind of bigger stage to advance their careers a little bit and kind of take advantage of the spotlight. I think Christian Leroy Duncan gets the job done. I'm really interested in him. I really like his striking. And quite frankly, it was a miss by me to not include him on the non-main event Fighters to Watch show that we did on Wednesday. Then we get into some of the bigger names on this card. In the lightweight division, it is Bobby Green taking on Paddy Pimblett. Bobby Green, 37 years old, out of San Bernardino, California, training at Pinnacle MMA. He is 32-15-1 with 1 no contest, 11 wins by knockout, 9 wins by submission. He has been finished 7 times in the 15 losses, 5 by knockout, 2 by submission. His last win coming at UFC 300 in a victory over Jim Miller. He's won 3 of his last 4, the only loss to up-and-coming contender Jalen Turner. Most significant strikes and most total strikes landed in lightweight history. Those marks both belonging to Green. He's been in the UFC since 2013, 13-10-1 in that time. After a 4-1 run in Strikeforce, he has been a pro since 2008. Taking on Pimblett, who has been an up-and-coming prodigy for a little bit now. 29 years old, born in Liverpool, England, training at Next Generation MMA Liverpool. 21-3 for the career with 6 wins by knockout, 9 by submission. He's been submitted once in the 3 losses that he has. The other 2 required the judges' scorecards. His last bout was against Tony Ferguson, as he is just running through everyone's favorites from a decade ago at the UFC 296. It's a 7-fight win streak for him. The last 2 have been by decision after he finished the first 5. He's been in the UFC since 2021. He's 5-0 in the promotion, finishing the first 2 in the first round. He hasn't been finished since 2013. So when Bobby Green was starting in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Paddy Pimblett was getting finished. He's a former Cage Warriors FC featherweight champion. Lost the fight for the vacant Cage Warriors FC lightweight championship, and he's been a pro since 2012. This is I think, significant step up for Paddy Pimblett. I know Tony Ferguson has the better resume, but where they are at in their careers, I think Bobby Green greater than sign Tony Ferguson. And I feel like there is going to be a lot of pressure on Paddy Pimblett because this is another, he's 37, it's an aging whatever. This is a true interesting test for Paddy Pimblett. And the one thing you can kind of knock him on for the Tony Ferguson performance, gas tank was running a little low in that third round. If Tony Ferguson can defend one takedown, that fight gets really, really interesting in that third round. But he didn't, and Pimblett was busy enough on top to finish that. Bobby Green could run a marathon and still whoop your ass. Like, he has cardio. I'm not going to say cardio for days, but he is certainly not one who tires out. And he did such an amazing job in the Jim Miller fight of almost forcing is the only way to say it. He forced that fight into the pace that he was comfortable with. The strikes come from everywhere. He has not, like, the whole, like, keep your hands up thing. He has spent exactly 0 days in his life fighting that way. The hands are down here always. And so because of that, he can be a little hittable at times, for sure. But also, because of that, the punches come from every direction imaginable. It's like, oh yeah, he's got a good jab. It comes from his hip, and he boom, throws it up like that. But he is such an interesting fighter, and he is basically like no one else Paddy Pimblett has faced before. This is, I think, legitimately a real step up in competition for Paddy Pimblett. And I know Paddy can be a little bit polarizing at times. And so the people who are against him are like, oh, Bobby Green's going to come in there and smash this kid. He's never faced anything like this before. And people who are on Paddy's side are like, look, this guy's a world beater. He's showing a well-rounded game. He can go out there and just powerbomb this old guy. I do think this is going to be a really, really close fight. I do think that we are at the point now where Paddy Pimblett's game has elevated a little bit beyond where Bobby Green is at this point. But this is going to be a true test of this prospect here in the lightweight division. But I think that this is going to be one of the ones that really gets that Paddy Pimblett hype train rolling again. I do think he gets the job done, but Lord help him if he doesn't get it done in the first 2 rounds, because I think Bobby Green is going to really ramp up the pressure going into that final round. And then we get into our 2 championship bouts of the evening. The first is for the interim heavyweight championship, as Tom Aspinall defends against Curtis Blaydes. Aspinall is 31 years old, out of Salford, England, training with Team Calbon and Aspinall BJJ. 14-3 for his career. He's finished every fight he's been in, with 11 wins by knockout, another 3 by submission. He has also been finished in 2 of the 3 fights that he has lost, 1 knockout and 1 submission loss. His last bout was a victory for the interim heavyweight championship at UFC 295, a win over Sergey Pavlovich that gives him back-to-back first-round knockouts. The last 4 wins he has had have all come inside the first round. He's 7-1 in the octagon. He's finished all of his UFC fights. Only the second fight even made it to the second round. His only loss in the UFC was a knee injury against Curtis Blaydes. That's the only time he's taken an L in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He has the shortest average fight time in UFC history at 2 minutes and 10 seconds. I'm sure there are a couple of qualifiers on that. And he has been a pro since 2014. Taking on Blaydes, who is 33 years old, out of Illinois, training at Elevation Fight Team. He is 18-4 with 1 no contest, 13 wins by knockout, another 5 by submission, and he has been stopped in all 4 of his losses. His last bout was a victory by knockout over Jailton Almeida at UFC 299. He's won 3 of his last 4, finishing all 3, again, 1 by injury to Tom Aspinall. In the UFC, he has been there since 2016, 13-4 in that time with 1 no contest. He has the most takedowns landed in UFC heavyweight division history, which is insane. He's a pro since 2014, BJJ purple belt under Cody Donovan, and was a junior college national champion and All-American out of Harper College. He has been, as I said kind of on the early stories, he has been dancing around this title shot for a really, really, really long time, and kind of ran into trouble every time that it's been, okay, this is going to be that opportunity. So I'm happy that even just coming off of 1 win, the victory over Almeida, I'm happy that he is able to get this opportunity here, but he is running into a buzzsaw. Tom Aspinall, I've said this before, if the John Jones mess wasn't happening, I think Aspinall would be one of the top stars in the sport, just given like the moniker of heavyweight champion, and his ability to finish fights, how aggressive he is, good looking dude, I would say. Like, he has all the star making ability that you would want. This guy should be fighting in soccer stadiums in England. And like I said on Monday, they're doing a decent job here. This arena seats about 23,000 people, I think, at its capacity. I don't know when you have to block everything off for the cage and media, how that changes things. But this guy should feel like a superstar with what he has been doing. And I feel like he is right there on the cusp of being that sort of a guy. He either needs to fight John Jones or needs John Jones to get out of his way. And I think John Jones not wanting to fight Tom Aspinall has every bit to do with Tom Aspinall being that much of an ass kicker. And look, I think that's more John Jones's team than John Jones. I would like to state that. Anytime we talk about a fighter ducking, I think John Jones, given the opportunity, would fight a grizzly bear. But I think John Jones's team is looking at name value and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, I just thought I'd put a caveat on that. This is an intriguing fight because Curtis Blaydes brings that wrestling pedigree that I certainly think you would assume would give someone like Tom Aspinall trouble. We just haven't seen him face trouble in the Ultimate Fighting Championship all that much. And that is something I worry about. Like, Almeida was able to pressure Curtis Blaydes in their fight at UFC 299, and really, he just kind of slipped. Excuse me. I'm still choked up about it. Jeez. He just kind of slipped into the takedown and left his head exposed, and Curtis Blaydes just was like, I'm just gonna keep elbowing this thing. And eventually got the win. So again, credit to him. And Curtis Blaydes is a really, really good fighter, a high-level fighter who should have had an opportunity like this probably a long time ago. I think this is a really bad matchup for him. While his stand-up has improved over the years, it is not to the level of a Tom Aspinall. And so I do think Aspinall kind of blitzes him again and is able to come away with a highlight reel sort of a finish coming up on Saturday. How does Curtis Blaydes win this fight? You got to time those takedowns perfectly, my guy. Because Aspinall, he doesn't really charge in recklessly, right? Like in his win over Pavlovich, Pavlovich kind of tagged him first and got him a little bit wobbly, but he stayed patient. And then as Pavlovich is coming in, it's that right to the temple that rocks his equilibrium, and then Aspinall decides to separate him from consciousness for a second with another big right that closes the show. But he's not really a charge it in type. You are going to have to time a takedown perfectly for Blaydes. Like, he does have a path to victory, and it's not just a puncher's chance. Like, he is, quite frankly, 5 takedowns away from winning the Ultimate Fighting Championship's interim heavyweight championship. I was going to say 3 takedowns away, but that gives Aspinall 2 rounds, which is 10 minutes, to find that dynamite and detonate it. And that is the problem when you are facing a fighter like Tom Aspinall, is you have to be perfect for 25 minutes. Curtis Blaydes has the wrestling ability to be able to do that. It's just, will he get that opportunity? Because every fight starts on the feet, and I just think that is going to be too much of a hurdle for Blaydes to overcome. So I do think the hometown guy, Tom Aspinall, ends up getting the win. And that takes us to the main event of the evening in the welterweight division for the welterweight champion. It is that division's kingpin, and hometown favorite Leon Edwards going up against Bilal, remember the name, Muhammad. Edwards is 32 years old, out of Kingston, Jamaica, now residing in Birmingham, England, training at Team Renegade BJJ. He is 22-3 in his mixed martial arts career with 1 no contest. He's won 10 fights by stoppage, 7 of those by knockout, another 3 by submission. Math. His losses, he's never been stopped. He has been to decision twice and lost, and 1 DQ loss. His last victory was unanimous decision victory over Colby Covington at UFC 296. It was his 12th win in a row with 1 no contest in there, which just always throw things off so much. But whatever. He hasn't lost since losing to Kamaru Usman in 2015. He only has a pair of KO wins since 2015, and both of those were finished in the last minute. One was finished at the last second, and then the Usman one was with 56 seconds to go in that legendary bout. He is a BJJ purple belt and the former, wrong one. He has been a pro since 2011. Forget the purple belt part. That belongs to Bilal Muhammad, who is 36 years old, born in Chicago, Illinois, Illinois, training at Rufus Sport and Chicago Fight Team. 23-3 with 1 no contest in his MMA career. 5 wins by knockout, another 1 by submission, the rest by decision. He was knocked out once in his career and has suffered 2 decision losses in his time in the octagon. His last fight, a decision win, all the way back at UFC 288 against Gilbert Burns. He is 9-0 with 1 no contest since his last loss in January of 2019. 7 of those 9 have gone to a decision. His only stoppage loss came in 2016. He lost 2 of his first 3 in the UFC and is 14-1 with 1 no contest since then. That 1 no contest was an eye poke against Leon Edwards. And so it's interesting how similar the main and co-main are in terms of the storyline, where you have hometown favorites who are coming home, who maybe don't fully get the respect they deserve in their divisions. More Aspinall than Edwards. I think we all agree that Edwards is currently the best welterweight in the world. I think it's just more, he's traditionally been overlooked. Not like where Aspinall, I think, is just overall overlooked right now. But both these guys getting the hometown treatment against fighters who have been close to title shots for a number of years, kind of have a reputation of not being the most aesthetically pleasing fighters out there on the planet, and are now getting these opportunities after in rematches of fights where injuries ended both other fights. Like it's really interesting, the parallels between the two. Anyway, Muhammad, 14-1 with 1 no contest since losing 2 of 3 to start his UFC tenure. BJJ purple belt, we covered that. And I was about to say, former Titan FC welterweight champion. This is a really, really interesting fight. I am happy Bilal Muhammad is getting this opportunity because, like I said, I feel like he has deserved it for a long time. And that had to be excruciating for him after a no contest where he gets poked in the eye and the fight ends. Now, I will say, that fight lasted at 5 minutes and 18 seconds, I believe it was. Leon Edwards controlled 5 minutes and 17 seconds of it, and then just happened to right in the eye, and that was that. Like, Edwards was in control of that bout. But since then, Edwards has gotten Diaz, Usman, Covington. Well, Muhammad has got a bunch of dudes you never heard of. And Gilbert Burns. That's oversimplifying things greatly, but you get my point. The roads traveled to this point have been significantly different for both of these fighters. And now they meet here in England. I have real worries about, not worries, that's overstating things. I don't know where Muhammad gets his win, because he is nowhere near the striker that Leon Edwards is right now. Edwards, we want to talk about the part of Edwards that is underrated. He might be like top 2 or 3 strikers in the world in mixed martial arts right now, with how accurate he is, the variety of strikes that he can comfortably hit you with, and the speed at which they come with. The accuracy, the speed, and the variety make him so dangerous. And then you watch the Colby Covington fight, and Colby wasn't able to take him down. And I just feel like if Colby wasn't able to take Leon Edwards down, I don't know if Bilal was going to be able to. Different styles and whatnot, but I just feel like Leon Edwards has the takedown defense to nullify what Bilal can bring, and he has the striking on the feet that I think is just going to match Bilal Muhammad. Bilal has made some amazing strides, and that is really where his opportunity comes, is that we haven't seen the best Bilal Muhammad yet, which is crazy that he's still improving this much at 36 years old. And he didn't face the most resistance from Gilbert Burns, who obviously was dealing with a shoulder injury at UFC 288. But still, the fact that he did that to a living, moving human being was not something we thought Bilal could do in the stand-up game. We know that he is a very talented wrestler, and the cardio, gas tank for days, all of those things, right? But the stand-up has improved significantly. It's just not on the level of Leon Edwards, which is fine. 99.9% of the human population doesn't have the striking of Leon Edwards. 95% of the UFC population doesn't have the striking of Leon Edwards. I just feel like Edwards has the tools in the toolbox to stop Bilal from getting in on the takedowns, and he has the tools in the toolbox to exploit what is not necessarily a weakness, but isn't the strength of Bilal Muhammad. So I do think Leon Edwards is going to come away with a victory in this bout this weekend. So those are my predictions and our breakdown for the main card of UFC 304. All right, that's it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You can catch videos of the full predictions over on YouTube right now, all in the full thing, plus Fight by Fight. If you want to check those out, make sure you go subscribe and like there. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy the fights, and we'll talk again soon. I'm out.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.